Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lounging with Lo, the podcast where we dive deeply into my favorite movies and TV shows. I am your host, Lo, and I'm so glad that you guys are able to join me this evening or morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in parts of the world here. So, I just want to let you guys know that, after doing this podcast and kind of working out the kinks and other natures of the works of my podcast here, I've noticed that I will have a lot of content to go over if I just go every episode by episode, especially if it's on a TV series here. So this is what I plan on doing. I'm just going to go ahead and talk about each season when I'm talking about my favorite TV shows, whether, be different highlights in there or my favorite moments or some little interesting facts or trivia portions of that. I think we're going to try and do that and see how we go. I know that in the previous podcast I did episode 1 specifically, and that's kind of when I noticed after that. I'm like, I better just go and do lots of seasons because Castle has 173 episodes individually. Most seasons have 24 episodes, some have 23. So that's just a lot of individual podcasts to go over. Let's go ahead and start talking about some of my favorite moments from season 1. We're going to do like a little bit of a review, a recap of season 1 and some of my favorite things that I noticed in some of the episodes that I've watched as well. So as everybody remembers, we are first introduced to the charming novelist turned amateur detective Richard Castle and also the no-nonsense NYPD detective Kate Beckett. So, grab your coffee, grab your wine, grab your beverage of choice, and let's go ahead and dive in to our favorite moments of Castle. So I just want to kind of give you a little bit of a personal thought or, personal story here. So I came into Castle about midway through, I want to say almost season 3 to season 4, like midway there when it first started airing, and I've watched it ever since then. So I never really understood most of the characters and what the settings and everything like that until I started buying the DVDs. And that's when I first started watching it all the way through from season 1 all the way to watching it on where I was at on the TV. And what's funny is I brought the DVDs over to my friend's house and we started watching it, and I started to pique her interest, and she has now rewatched the entire series on her own again, and we kind of talk about it because that's what we have a similarity about here. So again, we're going to do a brief overview of Castle. Again, it blends in the genres of comedy and crime solving, and sometimes it will keep you on the edge of your seat for certain plot twists of episodes, or they leave you with cliffhangers toward the end of the episodes or anything like that. Obviously, it has a lot of wit, suspense, and it's just an amazing roller coaster to see. And obviously, we first see Rick get his life turned upside down when in the very first episode, The Flowers for Your Grave, as I mentioned in my previous episode, he's at a book release party for Derek Storm, and Kate Beckett comes in wanting to question him about a possible murder that came from his books. So, that led him to being a consultant for the NYPD so that he can be able to write his next novel, who comes from the inspiration of Kate Beckett. So there's a lot of witty banter going on between Beckett and Castle that, is portrayed in the budding relationship of that in this particular season. So, as I have mentioned, most of the episodes are based in New York City. Obviously, everybody knows that New York City is a place that never sleeps. And that's very fitting because, obviously, as we all know, crime never sleeps as well. We see a lot of scenery from the precinct, whether it's, the detectives and Castle and the captain and the, at the desks trying to figure out the case, figure out, the plots and twists between it and figure out who the murderer is. We go back and forth to Castle's apartment where, Castle's private life is at. And we also see Lainey in her medical examiner office and other places as well. So, like I said, there's lots of good scenery in those shots as well. And if you have not seen it, obviously we want you guys to watch it. You can watch it on Hulu. You can see if you can be able to rent or buy the episode or the season on any streaming services that have the ability that has those. Or if you'd like to watch on your own time without the ads, of course, you can buy the DVDs from Amazon, which is what I did. So if you have not seen season 1, please do not go past this point. And we don't want you to hear any spoilers of any episodes that you haven't seen yet or anything like that. So, again, refrain from listening to the podcast. But if you guys have already seen season 1, let's go ahead and finish our conversation. So here's a little bit of the plot overview of everything. So again, it introduces the characters, and it shows how Castle and Beckett work every case together with the help of Javi and Ryan. So along the way, we see the private life of Castle with Alexis growing up, and obviously Martha being Martha. Again, Beckett's the secret fan that nobody knows about that we learned of the season. And then right here is what we learned about why Beckett became a cop. But as normal Castle fashion, he decides to investigate her case, but is also threatened if he looks further into it that her and Castle are finished, and discovers something and leaves the season with a cliffhanger. And it's like, what did they stay together? Did they do this? Like, what happened? That makes you want to watch it this time. So let's talk about some of the notable episodes that I kind of liked. I want to share with you guys. So, episode 5 is A Chill Goes Through Her Veins. So this one allows us to know the backstory of why Beckett became a cop. Now, obviously, as you guys know, the series started in 2009. So they're going back 10 years, which is 1999. Okay? So when she was 19, so obviously that tells you she's almost 30 years old. And when we first get introduced to her. Her mother, Joanna, was stabbed to death on her way to meet her and her dad, Jim, for dinner. So obviously the detective came in, who is Detective John Raglan, who we will probably know later on. There's always a backstory why he was involved. And they just kind of like put it on the back burner and try to stuff everything in a box to not really go into the case and solve it, as you saw through Chill in Her Veins with the cop that they were talking about. So she explains to Castle why she wears the watch and wears the ring that's around the chain. So the watch was symbolizing the downfall of her father being an alcoholic after the whole thing of Joanna Beckett's death. And he took it really hard, and she was able to save him. And he was 5 years sober. So that's amazing right there. And the ring on the chain was to tell us that this was the life that she lost, which was her mother. And they were never really able to explain or find out that they were able to find the killer, but what they did was they just took it down to a random act of gang violence. So, that's an amazing backstory there of what why she wears the ring, why she wears a watch, and things like that. And then obviously there's another episode. It's called Home Where the Heart Stops. So they're supposed to go to a charity event, and you see Beckett and trying to find a dress to go to the gala that Castle was able to get tickets for, and they're looking for dresses, and Laney's there helping. Like, there's nothing here, so they get a surprise visit at the door. It's a big white box, and it's a beautiful dress with a message on the box that says "Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo." They're like confused, but Becca's like, Cinderella, fairy godmother, But it's really, really pretty. She turns out really, really nice in the dress. Hell Hath No Fury. That's the number 4 episode. This is the first indication of what we call the same brain from Castle and Becca. So this is kind of like they're on the same page, thinking the same thing, and they say at the same time type of relationship. This is when we first get the indication of that. So we had a few guest stars come on the season here, and let's kind of talk about those guys for a second. So again, Monet Mazur, she plays Gina. She's probably best known for seeing her in Monster-in-Law, which is a good movie. We'll talk about that later on in the podcast series as well. Obviously we see Castle's poker buddies, James Patterson and Stephen Cannell. Those are real authors. Dan Castellaneta, if I'm saying their name correctly. If you're listening, I'm sorry if I butchered your name. He plays George Markaway. He is one of the voices from The Simpsons. Sarah Drew, she plays Chloe Richardson from Nanny McDead. And she is April Kepner from Grey's Anatomy. I'm not sure if you guys know that. George Newbern, he played Howard Peterson or Mr. Peterson. He was in Father the Bride 1 and 2. Bruce Campos, I'm sure you've seen him somewhere around in the movie industry. He played Calvin Creason in Castle. I can't remember what episode it was. I have to look at it again. Aldous Hodge, he played Ozzy in Always Buy Retail. Aldous Hodge, I have seen him in Leverage, and I love Leverage. We'll get to that later on as well. Starby Chanfield, she plays Meredith. Caterina Scarsoni, if I'm saying their name correctly, I'm sure it's an Italian name. Katerina, I'm sorry, that's how you say her name. Katerina is Amelia Shepard from Grey's Anatomy. She was really, really young, and she was also in Private Practice as well, with some of her co-stars from Grey's Anatomy. Judy Reyes, she plays Teresa Candela. She was mostly, I've seen her in Scrubs. Robert Picato, he plays Clark Murray. Robert Picato was the he was the medical doctor from Voyager. He was the one that was like the artificial intelligence guy. We see him in mostly episode 9, I believe. Either 9 or 10. So here's some crazy trivia that you guys probably didn't know about here. So let's talk about some of the episodes that I noticed here, and then we'll end the podcast tonight, or this evening, or this morning, or anything like that. So, Flowers for Your Grave. So most of the information I got is from IMDb that I thought I would share with you guys. So again, in Flowers for Your Grave, when Beckett is informed that Castle wants to help her on the case, she asks Compton Montgomery if she could talk to him privately. In the script, Montgomery was supposed to say yes, but instead he said no and shut the office door. The reaction was an honest one that the director liked, because he liked Stana's reaction to it so much that he decided to keep it. That wasn't originally in the script. Nanny McDead. Castle mentions his first novel was inspired by One Life to Live, which was a series in 1968. And I'm not sure if you guys knew this, and I didn't either. Nathan played Joey Buchanan on the show from 1994 to 1997, with a short reprise of the series in 2007. And in Hedge Fund Homeboys, when Brandon, who was a snot-nosed little brat of a kid, referred to what happened to the kids at the Duke case, he's talking about the case that happened with the Duke lacrosse team back in 2006, when 3 members of the Duke University lacrosse team was falsely accused of rape. You guys can look up that case later on in your own time. And also on the DVD, if you look on the chapters portion of that, it shows Hedge Fund Homeboys as episode 3 as episode 4 instead of episode 3, I believe it is. They have it switched. Because originally, Hedge Fund Homeboys was supposed to air after Hell Hath No Fury. And you can tell that because if you really pay attention, this is where the details come in. If you pay attention, I didn't catch this either until I looked this up. You can tell because at one point in this episode, which is Hedge Fund Boys, Castle's drinking out of a fancy coffee out of the nice white mug with a saucer. But see, he didn't buy the espresso machine yet. It didn't show up until Hell Hath No Fury. Whoa. Mind blown, isn't it? I didn't even know that. And I've watched this series a bunch of times. I didn't even know that. And always buy retail. They're talking about, obviously you guys know that he played Nathan played Malcolm Reynolds in Firefly in 2002. So in the episode, our Mrs. Reynolds, Malcolm is advised that sleeping with a character who happens to be a red-headed antagonist obviously will result to him in going to a quote-unquote very special kind of hell. So Castle used that to describe living near his equally egotistic and red-headed ex-wife, which is Meredith. And also, Nathan and Darby played characters who were previously married to one another in the movie Waitress. They played a husband and wife, which was very interesting. I didn't know that. Home is where the heart stops. In the beginning, when you see Castle and Alexis fencing, which is doing like a dramatic scene in there, for a fun thing. They're quoting the dialogue between Errol Flynn and Basil Rathbone in The Adventures of Robin Hood, the 1938 version of that, which is an amazing movie. I love that. We'll talk about that later in the podcast as well. So here's my final thoughts for the day, guys. I liked watching Castle from the first season because I understood how the characters came to be and what made Beckett because of the many layers of her life that we will soon learn, and by piecing together, taking the pieces of the layers off and what she calls the walls later on in her life as well. So guys, that wraps up our deep dive into season 1 of Castle. If you have really enjoyed this episode, I know it was really long, I do apologize, but if you really liked this episode, please, be sure to subscribe to Lounging with Lo and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, whether it be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, or even on my RSS feed from my Facebook page. You can also give me a review on that one as well. You can send me a message on Instagram as well. I have an Instagram page here. But guys, tune in next time as we get into an in-depth discussion of Castle Season 2. And if you guys have already seen Castle 1, let's go ahead and start watching Castle 2. I am already halfway through, a little bit past the halfway point of Season 2. I'm hoping to get as much information as I can so I can share it with you guys. But guys, thank you so much again for joining me. And as you guys probably didn't know, I'm talking to you guys through my recliner. And I'm actually going to be lounging with you. So again, join us next time as we talk about Castle Season 2. I'm your host, Lo, and guys, thank you so much for being with me today, and let's lounge together. Have a good day, guys.